Hello, and welcome to Soothing Pod's Sleep Stories. My name is Arif, and tonight I will be your guide as we travel to a world of fantasy where a young princess will embark on a journey of love and hope across a beautiful, magical realm with the love of her life, searching for rain so that her curse can be broken. Before we begin, however, let us take a moment to relax and find comfort in the space that we are in, here and now. Close your eyes and allow your body to sink into the mattress beneath you. You have no to-do lists right now, no obligation except to close your eyes and let your body guide you to a night of restful, relaxing sleep. As you lie there in bed with your eyes closed and your body gradually relaxing more and more and more and more, try and imagine clouds forming above you in your bedroom. The clouds can look any way you would like. They can be bright, cottony clouds, lazily drifting near your ceiling, or they can be dark, heavy, brooding clouds, bringing with them a sense of calm, an invitation to slow down. Whatever the clouds overhead might look like, next, try and imagine rain tumbling down, 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 down from them. Feel the rain pepper your skin as it drizzles from the cloud that you have created. Can you hear the sound of the rain? The pitter-patter, 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 pitter-patter as it dances across your skin and the room surrounding you. Though the rain is kissing your face and arms, know that you are still comfortable, kept warm and cozy by your fluffy blankets. As these raindrops fall on you, picture them landing one by one. One heavy raindrop lands on the tip of your nose, another on your left cheek, one in the center of your forehead, another one on your temple. And with each of these beautiful, unique drops, feel any stress, tension, or anxiety you are carrying within yourself melt away. The rain soaks into your skin like water in a plant's dry soil, nourishing you, providing you with the sustenance and support that you need. Feel those raindrops as your skin welcomes them one by one. A raindrop falls on the back of your hand, on the top of your ear, on the side of your jaw. Each one is a gift from the sky, a gift from nature, reminding you that we are all connected and within the gentle touch of the world. We can all feel whole and find comfort. As the tension gradually melts away with every drop, feel your body growing lighter and lighter, more free with every pitter-patter, 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 pitter-patter. And now that we have taken the time to relax and find comfort in the space that we are in, here and now, let us begin. The kingdom of the golden sun was aptly named, and truly, it was the only of its kind. Tucked away on the far right side of the island, the kingdom of the golden sun was one of immense beauty and of people who had gradually adapted to the unique landscape. It was a landscape of dryness, of desert, and yet of life. A landscape of low valleys, of bright orange canyon walls that were as vibrant and sweet as the ripe pulp of a tangerine. Truly, the land looked as though it had been painted and crafted by the gods. Everywhere you looked were mountains of brilliant rock that looked like they had been molded by hand. They were a mosaic of warm tones, sometimes appearing in swirls across the rock. There were swaths of bronze, of rust, of honey, marigold, and clay, all dancing and swaying across the rocks, looking as though they were constantly in motion. And nestled between those rocks, tucked down, 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 at the base of the most beautiful canyon anyone had ever seen, was the town of the Golden Sun. It was a bustling town, full of cozy adobe houses and streets made of sandstone. And in the center of town, sitting next to the winding river that made its way through the canyon, was the Queen's castle. And within that castle, there lived a lonely, brilliant princess named Isadora. As the daughter of the Queen, Isadora was long expected to remain quiet, to be complacent and agree with everything the adults said. However, that wasn't Isadora's style. As a young girl, her mother was forced into marriage in order to unite the kingdom of the Golden Sun with a wayward kingdom, and the man she married, King Kristoff, was neither kind nor considerate. As a father, he wasn't charmed by Isadora's strong nature like the others were, and when Isadora expressed that she wished her mother had never had to marry a man like him, in his rage, he placed a curse on Isadora. He cursed Isadora to never know love, for if she were to fall in love with a man, in that moment, she would feel a tug at her heartstrings, and within 7 days, the man she loved would perish. However, there was a way to stop it. If Isadora could kiss the love of her life under a rainy sky, he would be saved. But as she looked over the dry, cracked landscape, which hadn't seen rain in dozens of years, she knew that the chance to save her lover would never come, and certainly it wouldn't come within the 7-day period. So, Isadora spent more of her days isolated and alone. As she grew into a teenager and then into a young adult, she watched as her former classmates fell in love and got married. She knew she would never be able to feel that love, that connection, and it wounded her deeply. But the older she got, the more challenging her isolation became. She often found herself wandering out into the depths of the canyons, wading through the river to look for something beautiful, something that could bring her a fraction of the joy and belonging she saw in her friends' eyes when they looked at their partners. It was a few days shy of her 26th birthday when she set out on her longest walk through the river yet. She tied her short black hair into a braid, tied her royal dress above her knees, and stepped into the cool water with a smile on her face. As she walked farther and farther, the people began to fade away. Many walked this trail, but never to the depths that she was traversing, and that truly brought her great comfort. The fewer people she was around, the less afraid she was of the curse that had plagued her for so long. After a few hours of walking and marveling at the canyon around her, she found herself at the end of the trail, and before her was a sight unlike anything she had ever seen before. Because tumbling down, 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 down from the very top of the impossibly tall canyon was a waterfall. It cascaded over the marvelous marmalade walls in wisps of white and blue. The mist cast a white gossamer through this alcove in the canyon, giving the entire area a mystic, enchanted feel that Isadora had never experienced before. She gazed up at this waterfall in wonder for quite some time, her hands held tightly against her chest, as if to keep the overwhelming emotions inside her. She pondered for quite some time about how beautiful the world was, and of many stunning things there were to see within it. And she thought about how much nicer it would be to see it with someone else. She felt tears begin to cloud her vision, tears of joy, tears of sadness, tears of appreciation. Perhaps it was all three. And as she gazed up at this natural wonder and awe, listening to the sound of the roaring water echoing on the walls, listening to the call of the birds as they flitted from the few trees that managed to grow by the water, there was one thing she wasn't expecting to hear. "Are you crying, miss?" His voice was tinged with a mix of concern and appreciation. Startled, Isadora fell back on the slippery rocks, falling into the water with a splash. The shock of the water against her skin and the realization that there was someone near her almost distracted her from the pain that shot through her ankle at that moment. "Oh dear, let me help you up," the stranger said. Only then did Isadora look at him, and when she did, she had the breath knocked out of her for a second time. The man standing in the water beside her was perhaps the most handsome person she had ever seen. His wide green eyes sparkled with concern, black curls framing them, making them look even brighter than they were. He had on a white-collared shirt that was peppered with the colors of nature: garnet gobs from the juice of berries, hickory swaths of soil and earth, sage stains from plants he had mixed and harvested. It was like he himself had become a walking canvas for nature. His muscular frame was adorned with the items of a traveler: a worn leather satchel, an ancient sword tucked away in an ornate sheath, a mix of straps and harnesses and soft homemade pouches to gather all the things he had foraged. For a moment, Isadora was so transfixed by him that she couldn't speak, and because of this, the man leaned down and helped her to her feet, gently telling her, "It's all right if you can't talk. Let me help you, okay?" As Isadora rose up to her feet, wrapped in the arms of this stranger, she managed, "I can speak. I just wasn't expecting to see anyone else here." "Well, we have that in common," he replied, a playful tone bounding through his words. He asked Isadora if she could put weight on her foot, and she was surprised and discouraged to realize she could not. In her fall, she had hurt it much more than she realized. "You're from the town of the Golden Sun, I presume?" he asked. When she nodded, he clicked his tongue, shaking his head slightly. "I'm afraid you won't be able to make it back tonight." Though Isadora knew this to be true, hearing him say it aloud made her defiant, frustrated. She knew she couldn't remain here, not with him. And yet, the man smiled at her and helped her limp ashore. He led her toward the waterfall, promising that he had something that could help her be on her way first thing in the morning. As Isadora approached the waterfall, she realized that behind it was not just rock, but a hidden alcove tucked behind the water. And there, wedged between the beautiful mossy wall and the cascading waters of the waterfall, was a tiny home. "This is where I've been staying for the past few weeks. It's not much, But Isadora interrupted the man, so enthralled with her surroundings that she couldn't help herself as she exclaimed, "It's beautiful." The man helped Isadora down onto a soft pile of blankets and textiles that surely had taken him a long time to collect. Afterwards, he went into his bag and pulled out a small glass jar containing a pine-colored substance. He explained that he was a traveler, a nomad, because he was training to be a botanist and a medicine man. Certainly, he joked, she fell near the right man. He gently took the medicine he had prepared and rubbed it on her swollen ankle, being careful not to hurt her any further. The care and gentleness in his gaze and his touch made Isadora feel more and more at ease. When he was finished, his gaze swept up to hers, and filling the space between them was a spark. Isadora immediately lowered her gaze, trying to fight the feeling that was bubbling up inside her. She hadn't felt the feeling yet, not the feeling the king had cursed her with, and she had to do all she could to avoid that from happening. But there was one thing she needed to know. "What's your name?" she asked quietly, her words barely understandable against the roar of the waterfall. "It's Emilio," the man replied, a smile on his face. Isadora took Emilio's hand in hers and shook it quickly, thanking him for his help. Then she told the man that she needed to be on her way. Unsteadily, she tried to rise to her feet, only to wobble and nearly fall. Emilio rose to his feet, helping steady her. "You can't go anywhere with your leg like this. By the morning, it'll be healed, but for now, you need to stay." Seeing her discomfort, Emilio added, "You can stay in the home, and I will sleep outside." Knowing this was her only option, Isadora nodded, quietly thanking Emilio. So, for the rest of the afternoon, these two strangers sat in the same campsite together. Isadora tried to busy herself so Emilio wouldn't talk to her, but Emilio was the talkative type. He talked to her, to no one, or to himself several times. He told her stories of how he ended up underneath this waterfall, how he had been traveling alone without seeing anyone else for several months. And when he said that, Isadora realized why he was talking so much. He was a lonely man, a man probably as lonely as she was, maybe even more so. She felt that spark again, that dangerous spark that scared her, but also made her feel alive at the same time. As nighttime fell on the canyon, Emilio made a small fire in the middle of the camp. He grilled some fish and vegetables over the flames as Isadora watched, and gradually she began to let her guard down. She asked Emilio what he did to entertain himself all the way out here. He leaned back, his face's soft features illuminated by the honey glow of the fire. "I read, mostly," he replied, softly taking a book out of the leather rucksack he carried with him. Isadora brightened, asking him what the book was about. He told her the title, On a Moonlit Night, and she could hardly contain herself. She had never heard of such a book, which was remarkable, because she had read every single book in the Royal Library. Pleased to hear about her love of reading, Emilio popped open the book and offered to read to Isadora after dinner. And though Isadora knew that was potentially dangerous, a handsome man reading to her in the glow of a fire, she agreed, eager to hear the new story tumbling from his lips. And so he read to her. His voice was low and magical amid the crackle of the fire and the rumble of the waterfalls. It was like the earth itself, welcoming, nourishing, rough around the edges, and somehow as smooth as honey. She watched him read for hours, long after the food was done. The story was a sweet romance, one that sent warmth tumbling through her whole body, and as they reached the end, and Emilio closed the book, his eyes met hers. He thanked her for reading with him, and then he admitted he was lonely. He loved his work, loved traveling, loved helping others, but he hadn't had a home in a long time. He hadn't had friends, nor a family, nor a place in the world. And for the past few hours, you have given me a home, Isadora. As he told her this, his eyes drifted up to meet hers, vulnerable, honest, deep. And as this happened, Isadora's whole world changed. Inside her, there was a tug at her heart, warm and overwhelming, full of longing, power, and belonging. The world faded away for a moment, the landscape around her replaced with swirls of light in the darkness. And in the center of this darkness and light was Emilio, smiling at her. But his smile shifted to a look of confusion, and then a look of connection. He leaned forward, as if drawn to Isadora by an invisible thread. And then everything returned to normal. Emilio put a hand to his head, looking dizzy and confused. What was that? I've never felt like this before, he mumbled. Isadora took a few deep breaths, trying to calm herself. This kind, intelligent, vulnerable, handsome man was in trouble now, all because she had fallen in love with him, all because he made her feel like she belonged for the first time in her life. She clasped her hands around his, trying to fight the tears rimming her vision. "Have you seen it rain, Emilio?" she asked. He was taken aback, but responded, "Yes, in the land of the harvest moon." Isadora told him that they needed to head there first thing tomorrow. Emilio was confused by this, asking her if she was feeling all right. Isadora had no choice but to tell him the truth. They needed to travel to this land to save his life, because she had fallen in love with him, and she was sorry, so deeply sorry. But, to her surprise, Emilio reached over the fire, gingerly placing his fingers against her cheek. His gaze overflowed with appreciation, with reassurance as he asked her, "Please don't apologize for that, or I may have to apologize for falling in love with you, too." The tears spilled over, but Emilio wiped away each and every one, assuring her that they would head to the land of the harvest moon first thing in the morning. They would find rain, and they would share their first kiss beneath it. Morning couldn't come soon enough. The moment the first rays of golden sunshine blanketed the canyon wall, Isadora was on her feet. She awakened Emilio by shaking him gently. He stretched in the cool morning air, breathing in the sweetness of the world waking up around him. They packed up camp in unison, sharing very few words in a comfortable silence, and with that, they were on their way. It took them quite some time to make their way up the impossibly tall canyon walls, but as they did, they saw something remarkable play out before them. The progression of morning on the canyon walls. With every inch that the sun rose higher in the sky, the more sun rays poured into the canyon, pushing the shadows to the ground. The canyon glowed in a mosaic of brilliant colors: golden, rose, crimson, blush, and fawn, all swaying and melting together as the day moved on and on and on. On occasion, Emilio would urge Isadora to catch her breath and look at the canyon with him, and every time he did, Isadora was reminded of how she fell in love with him so quickly. Little did she know, Emilio had fallen in love with her even before she had spoken her first word. And it wasn't because of her beauty. It wasn't because of her body. It was because of the way she looked at the waterfall and the way this feat of nature made her feel. Because of the way it was reflected in her being. He appreciated life and nature the same way she did. She found solace in it the same way he did, and that made him fall for her. As they reached the top of the canyon, Isadora paused. She had lived her whole life in this canyon, never seeing the world beyond. She had read books, had heard stories, but this was to be her first glimpse into the world beyond. and it was even more breathtaking than she ever imagined. Because when they emerged, they were emerging into a meadow. Isadora looked around in wonder. It was a field flourishing with fragrant wildflowers. It was as if colors had been woven through the grass, sewed into the earth. The tall, sweet grass swayed in the gentle breeze, rippling and waving like ocean waves, and on that breeze was the scent of the flowers, the sweetness of their nectar, the floral bounty of their petals, the earthiness of their roots. Isadora had never seen anything so beautiful. Only it didn't stop there. This meadow stretched for miles, and in the distance, there were layers of nature to be encountered. There was a stunning forest of cedar and pine, a raging river, and on the horizon, a blue, ethereal mountain. Emilio gently took Isadora's hand, leading her further into the meadow with a smile. He pointed to the mountain on the horizon. On the other side of that mountain is a valley, a bountiful valley that is always in harvest season. Its leaves are eternally red, orange, and yellow. Its fields forever full of fresh, ripe fruit, and its skies always heavy with healing rain. The words filled Isadora with joy. She had never heard of such a magical place. She never knew a place of such beauty would be the place to save her. So they pressed on. They wandered through the forest of cedar and pine, breathing in the bright, citrusy aroma of the towering trees. On occasion, Isadora had to stop to simply take it all in. She had never seen trees so tall, never seen so much green before, and every time she stopped to marvel at the world, Emilio gazed at her, falling more and more in love. As they emerged from the pine and cedar forest, they found themselves at the banks of the river. And this was a river that put the one in the canyon to shame. It was a winding, powerful river, so clear you could see every speckled stone in its base. Emilio took her hand and led her across a rickety wooden bridge that sang with every step. When they reached the base of the mountain, it was time to camp for the night. For most of the night, Emilio and Isadora lay next to one another by the fire, watching as the moon rose higher and higher over the impressive mountain. And as it did so, they whispered about what tomorrow would bring. Would it be the day they broke the curse? The day that love would win? The next morning, Isadora awakened to find that Emilio was holding her. The morning air was cool and brisk, but Emilio's arms wrapped around her, and his body pressed up against hers was so warm, so comforting. She had never been held like this before. Her soul felt as though It was healing from his touch, as if those years of neglect, of loneliness, were melting away by the minute. About an hour later, the two were finally ready to shake off their dreams entirely. They rose to their feet and began the journey over the mountain. With every step, the land around them became more and more beautiful. The canyon in the distance, the canyon Isadora had called home. She could see the full length of it now, as it laced through this beautiful, sacred land. She saw the potential of the world now, potential that had once been hidden from her by tall canyon walls. They crested the peak of the mountain, and finally, Isadora got her first look at the land of the harvest moon below. It was a land ablaze with the colors of changing leaves. The leaves were golden, scarlet, chocolate, and apricot, all swaying in the gentle autumn breeze, and around them were fields overflowing with crops. Large ripe pumpkins, eggplants, and squashes and tomatoes, juicy and fresh. Never-ending fields of honey-colored wheat, dancing and brushing against one another in the wind. It was like a fantasy. In a daze, Isadora started descending down, 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 down into the valley, holding Emilio's hand with every step. And as they reached the bottom, they found themselves in a grove of the stunning autumn trees. They were so tall they seemed to touch the sky, and the autumn-colored leaves began to fall around them, drifting on the breeze as though they were suspended in a dream. Soon, that wasn't the only thing falling around them. Overhead, dark gray clouds blanketed the once blue sky, and then the rain began to fall. At first, Isadora didn't know what it was. She felt a drop of cool, refreshing water land on the palm of her hand, then another, then another, then another. The earth around her began to smell otherworldly, sweet and mysterious and inviting and relaxing all at once. And when she looked at Emilio, she saw the raindrops tracing down his face, rolling off his dark black curls. His green eyes glistened with emotion. "It's raining," Isadora whispered. "It is," Emilio replied, his voice soft and alluring. Ever so gently, Isadora leaned forward, wrapping her hand in Emilio's beautiful hair. She drew him forward, pressing her lips against his. And in that moment, the weight disappeared. Her heart softened as her love swelled, unashamed, untethered, safe. She felt the power of the curse melt into the ground at her feet with the raindrops. And when they pulled apart, there was only one thing she could think to say. "I love you, Emilio. she murmured it against his lips. He gave her a gentle peck before he replied, "And I love you, Isadora." It was a day of celebration, the end of the curse, and the beginning of the rest of their lives together. For hours, they sat under the shade of the autumn leaves and watched as the rain cascaded on the landscape around them. And for the first time in their whole lives, they weren't lonely. I hope you have enjoyed this sleep story and it brought you a night of peaceful, relaxing sleep. Please join me again tomorrow for another sleep story. Until then, sweet dreams.